Okay, are we live? Am I going live right now? Let me know if you can hear me. I would greatly appreciate that effort. Something is going on though. Update titles. Coder. Don't know what you're there for, but sure. Huzzah, there it is. Copy. Paste. Okay. So it looks like it's working. So that's good to hear. Let's pop in now. Okay. We have half an hour. Jeez. Glad I'm quote unquote on it. This is completely random. I'm trying. Oh, hey, look! I got a notification that I'm live. Great, I am live. Go us. Network and Hangouts. And then we are going to turn on my camera. And we are going to share my screen. Okay. Do. 3, 4, 3, 4, 1, 2. Great. Great, it works. Yay. Okay. So, what does this look like? Pop you out. Oh, hello. I don't know, I mean, you're... Can you see or hear me in any way?
Survey, but it really does involve a lot of customer sentiment. It's incredibly difficult for you to really find the right information at the right time, fast enough for a business to really respond.
Okay.
Critical question for you: how exactly do you measure trust? Obviously, the easiest
All right.
option is to.
Oh, I should probably inform my Discord, huh? Duh. Do do do. Do 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 do. I actually need to go access my social media now. I am so frazzled today. Like, just absolutely insane crazy right now. Do I actually have... You know, one of the things that I keep forgetting to do is I keep forgetting to actually store all of my YouTube thumbnails for a longer period of time. I don't know why. It just never occurs to me, you know? So the important question, I guess, is I know I've advertised it, but did I use the screenshot for this particular video? I honestly don't think I did. New mission, new intro. So we're scrolling back far enough. Huzzah! I found it. We're good. Yeah. Adding that now. Do. And then we're gonna publish this all right now. Publish. Save. All right. Sent. And for those who have no idea what's going on my screen is last year's Edelman Trust Barometer, which I'm super excited about. The last year's Trust Barometer was very much about information diets and education, but one of the biggest things about the Edelman's Trust Barometer is that it gives you a sense of the macro and the micro trends that different industries are going to be responsible for. Most primarily is community, right? Like when it comes to the development and infrastructure of business trust, communities have become the de facto method for doing that. And we have completely new approaches and methods now to ensuring that infrastructure. And that's kind of what I'm hoping we're going to get out of this, I think. Let me know in the chat. I think we should be live on YouTube. We should be live on LinkedIn. And we should be live in the community Discord right now. If you do want to actually join me, just hop into the community Discord and click on network and share, and we'll see you right there, you know? I am just gonna keep sharing stuff. I think Instagram just gave me a notification. It's so weird sometimes when you start to stream and you don't get any like physical feedback. You're just like talking to yourself. But then again, that's like what most online interaction is, huh? Where did it go? Co-schedule? I tried to send this live on Instagram, so I'm hoping that co-schedule will just share it for me. Hey Adrian, how's it going? All right. So Instagram is good, and now I'm just gonna grab this huge thing here. Pop over. You know, one of the big things that I really need to figure out, and I think I might need other people's assistance for this, I have this thing called congenital amusia, And it's effectively that my brain just has a lower resolution understanding of tones. And it makes it very difficult for me to like enjoy or find reverence in and actively go to like music. So like a part of these streams is definitely going to be finding some like royalty free music eventually. I just don't know where I should go or what I should do. I kind of wonder if it might be a good idea for me to use like MeSeeks or something like that in order to like community crowdsource it. I think that that would be really fun. Events. I'm informing CMX now. Post that. Yay. Huh. Talk base. Let's inform the talk base peeps. There you go, talk base. Uncommon. Events. And then Threado. Events. Channels. Ask and offers. Intros. Post product. Resources? Yeah, I wonder if I should actually be doing like more frequent and consistent watch parties in general. Um, I don't know. Hmm. So I'm a part of this all about the data community, which Elvis introduced me to, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And I've been in it for a fair amount of time, but geez, when you start to think about like how overwhelming Discord channels actually are, like they are absolutely crazy insane. It's an Evan. Hi, Evan. Introduce the Orbit crew. How are you doing? Do 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 do. Okay. Hey, you kid F. It looks like you're in here. Something up?
Yeah, hi Wayne.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
I am inviting a bunch of people to the stream now.
Yeah, to see that. I never knew we could stream live from Discord.
You require a little bit of extra stuff, but yeah, it works pretty well, I think. Um, yeah. So the way that I'm doing this right now is I have YouTube and LinkedIn attached to like this thing called Restream. And then Restream attaches to my OBS software. And my OBS software is a virtual camera into my Discord. So it's like daisy chaining like 6 different technologies at the same time.
That's a lot of technical stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Can I ask, what are you seeing right now?
Okay, Fane, please wait for the host to start this webinar.
Okay, cool. So it looks like it's sharing the window. So that's a good test, I think. What I'm actually going to do, though, is I'm going to uh, end my stream and then do it again. And I'm going to share my whole screen. Go live. How's that? Can you see the whole stream now?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes!
It shows.
It works.
Cool.
So we have a 12.5 minute video from 2022. I think what I can do, just toss this on in the background. So one of the big issues that I have is that I struggle a lot with streaming because like I'm really, really bad at music, like background audio, because I have this thing in my head called congenital amusia. And it's basically like being colorblind, but for audio tones, which is kind of interesting. So I don't know. Maybe we could just have something running nice and quiet in the background, I hope.
Yeah, always works for me. That, I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah. Have you heard of the Edelman's Trust Barometer before?
Sorry, come again.
Oh,
Oh, I'm looking at the video and it's not aligning with what you were saying. Like, okay, what's going on? So I just remember that you mentioned you were to like play something in the background.
oh yeah. So one of these is just like a small video that I did, and then the other one is, I think there's like a 15-second delay. Yeah.
Okay, no sound though.
Another thing that I could do, let me copy this and shoot it over in the chat. Maybe that would be a good way to do it too. Looks like Evan's gone. No! Oh well, it's fine. It's LinkedIn. People are just kind of hanging out. So my stream in Discord is basically running a desktop sim, and then I'm pulling a screen share on top of that. This is weird. This is very interesting. I'm learning how this works.
Well, I'll tell you when it is fast.
Yeah. But yeah. So how are you doing, just in general? How have things been going for you?
Been great. Just a lot of issues there and there. So in my country, we held our election, the presidential election last Saturday. Last Saturday. So it's just been a little bit of chaos here and there, but we wasn't outside. Yeah.
That makes sense. So, was it like an upsetting landslide, or do you think like the election went okay?
It did not go okay.
Oh no.
It did not go okay. Yeah, it was really there were killings. Weirdly, there were killings and there was a lot of harassment and just I don't even know how to explain it, but
Yeah.
it's just so funny over here.
Yeah.
It's been a very interesting thing to witness in the past few days.
Yeah.
Party to party fighting, there's just really a lot on the citizens. I honestly, beyond the politicians, I think they are all relaxed, trust me. But the citizens, they're just the one receiving it. They're the receiving end, right? They're just been on the receiving end, and it's really crazy. It's really crazy. There's been scarcity in the country. There's been fuel scarcity. There's really there's been a whole lot of things going on. Like a whole lot to discourage you, but
Yeah.
so yeah.
Oof.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I one of the big issues that I struggled with when Trump got elected was for America it was such a big deal, right? And like he's so impactful in global reputations. But there was also this big outcry from a lot of different countries around the world where they're just like, oh, so America finally has one of these elections where things are just like really terrible. And that's largely normal for a lot of for a lot of countries throughout Africa, the Middle East, South America. Like, it's kind of a point of privilege for us to be like, look how terrible this person is. There was no peaceful transfer of power. And in several other countries, like, it's a luxury if there's a peaceful transfer of power, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
We're just hoping for one man to win. Honestly, like just one man. Is, his name is Obi Peter, rather. I think that sounds better. Peter, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So or we rather believe that he's going to do very good work. What as opposed to his counterpart, because recently people figured that he had this drug dealing profile
Oof.
before running for seat. I mean, in the same country, why would a drug dealer run for an office that, you know, as high as, the presidential seat? Very crazy, but that one face over here. He still came out, even old, very old. Just a lot of complications on this guy's profile, but he just wants power. And I really hope what they're doing now, because they're trying to rig the election. I just really hope they don't do it in his favor. But it's looking like it, but I really don't know. It's just going to be a very crazy, crazy experience having him on seats. It's going to be
Yeah.
really tough. Like, very, very tough.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, I hope that things get better.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah. I struggle with what can really be said there necessarily, but I don't know. It's just so hard to deal with political situations on an international level because I don't really feel like I will honestly understand, you know?
Yeah. I totally get that. Yeah, I totally get that. So yeah. Um, well, yeah. Lastly, I was just going to ask. I mean, the keynote topic I shared. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I haven't had any response from you.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. So directly after this, I actually have a 2 hour block where I'm going to be putting together the design and the marketing materials and stuff like that to announce you as a keynote. Um, I'm sorry, I just have not done that yet because I've just been so bogged down with tomorrow's e course. Are you going to be attending the metrics e course?
Yes, I think I got the mail saying check out something before the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I haven't really read it, but I know I got a mail saying ahead of I'm trying to find what mail is that now. Um, uh,
And it looks like we have about 1 minute before the Zoom starts.
yeah, just going to maybe after the.
Yeah. Do, do, do. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Recording in progress for this webinar today. We are
And let me
to talk about the 2023
restream this correctly.
My name is Tina Cortondale, and I'm the president and CEO of the Institute for Public Relations. So before
Can you hear okay?
I have a few reminders for you. I know you all heard this before, but we do have a lot of people that are going to join the call.
It's
If you
echoing.
have any logistical questions or technological difficulties during today's
Oh my
session,
lord.
feel
Oh
free to
geez,
send
my
us
computer is very unhappy right now.
We also have a really large group today, so if you have questions, try to share them
There we go.
in the Q&A piece and not the chat, because it's much easier to monitor the Q&A.
Can you hear it?
So we do encourage you to use the chat,
Yeah, it's still echoing.
resources,
It's echoing?
whatever you think.
Yeah, I figured that would probably happen. What happens if I do that? Can you hear it still? Or no?
But yeah, this is better now. But the screen is blank. You know why?
So today I'm so
Instead of blank
excited
white.
to introduce Margo
Uh,
Edelman. She's one of our new IPR
Whoa, that's interesting.
the Deputy General Manager of Edelman.
Stop sharing that. Share my screen.
Previously, she was the General Manager of Edelman's Bay Area Hub, which spans 170 professionals in San
Screens.
Francisco. So
One.
Margo first is going to discuss the findings
Go
of the
live.
Trust Barometer, and then we're going to turn it over to our moderator.
Okay, how is that?
Our moderator today is Eleanor Hawkins,
Yeah, sure.
communication strategist and writer at Axios, where she authors the weekly Axios Communicator newsletter. It's really good. You should subscribe. And covers
Okay.
topics and trends in how leaders, brands, and employers communicate. So I'd also like to introduce our
And let me know, everyone. It's pretty quiet and echoey. Yeah, I think that what might be happening is my desktop audio isn't coming through.
Ariel, Patrick, the Chief Communications
Let me see if I can't
Officer
fix
for
that.
Investment, where she leads an integrated team that handles all communications for the firm and its private equity subsidiary Ariel Alternatives. Next, we welcome Oscar Suris, who is president of Edelman's New York office, who has 20 years of experience.
Yeah, 'cause my
public relations leadership to Fortune 100 companies and 10 years of experience.
Are you able to hear me when I...
And last but not least, we're happy to have Tridi Porvarami, who is the communications officer of science programs.
Yeah,
for
I
the
could
Gordon
hear
Betty
you.
Moore
I
Foundation.
could hear them,
In her
but
role,
it's
she focuses
not
on the
very
advancement
audible.
of emerging scientific fields through developing new technologies,
Yeah.
supporting imaginative research scientists, and creating
But
new
yours is perfect.
collaborations at the frontiers of traditional scientific disciplines.
Equal.
So thank you all for being part of this webinar and to Edelman for their partnership. And with that, I will hand the floor over to Margo to start our webinar.
Okay, is it still echoing now?
Thank you so much, Tina, and thank you to the whole IPR team for having us.
I wonder if it's
today.
because...
Share the findings of the 2023 Trust Barometer.
I do wonder if it's because I have audio coming through both Discord and OBS.
As well as Axios. So give me 1 second while I share my screen. I promise I know
I'm also trying to increase the volume on my end, but I think I've reached the limit.
Can everybody see this one? Okay, good. All right, so we're going to take you through the findings of the 2023 Edelman Trust Barometer. So before I get into the findings, I want to take you through a little bit of the methodology behind the Trust Barometer. So this is an annual survey we do of media, business, government, and NGOs around the world. We look at trust in each of these 4 key institutions. The survey this year is in its 23rd year. So we have, significant longitudinal data around trust. And we did this survey in 28 countries with really 32,000 respondents around the world. We really try to get sort of a representative sample all the way from Latin America to the United States
I'm just
to
saying
Asia
it's
to
not
Europe.
audible enough.
So really get a broad swath of countries that participate in the survey. Found this year is the key theme is polarization. And we found sort of 4 forces really leading to polarization around the
Okay,
world.
how's that?
First is economic anxiety. What we found is that economic optimism is collapsing around the world. In 24 of the 28 countries that we surveyed, we found all-time lows in respondents saying that their families are going to be better off 5 years from now than they are today. People don't necessarily think their future is going to be better than the present. Second, there's institutional imbalance. Today, business is the only institution that's viewed as competent and ethical. Government is viewed as unethical and incompetent, which is not good. And what we can see is that business is really under pressure to step into this void left by government. We'll get into some examples later of what government was doing that businesses sort of now expect to step into. Next is the mass-class divide. So we can see that people who are living in the top quartile of income in their respective countries live in a very different trust reality than people who live in the bottom quartile. If you're in the top quartile, life is good, trust is institutions. The world is working for you. When you don't, you really view the world as not necessarily working for you. You stop trusting the same institution. And then lastly is the battle for the truth. We can really see that media has given way to echo chambers, become more polarized. And we also see that people don't trust the media, particularly because there is a significant amount of distrust in social media. That's what's really driving the distrust in media and fear of misinformation. So let's start here with the economic optimism and what we see from the data. So what we found is that economic optimism this year truly, what we found is collapsed. So particularly if you look in the developed world, the UK, Germany, Italy, France, what we found is when we asked, well, is your family going to be better off 5 years from now than today? What we found is that the majority don't think that. And in fact, it significantly dropped from last year to this year in terms of the numbers. And it's really much more in the developing world, India, Indonesia, Kenya, where we do think that people see the world better 5 years from now than
Is the audio still problematic?
Business is the only trusted institution. So if you look at the business, NGOs, government, and media, business stands at 62 points globally. Media is the lowest at 50 points. It's dropped by a point.
I didn't realize
and again, what we see is the least trusting institutions, least trusting countries for these institutions typically are in the developed world. They're the UK, Japan, South Korea, but it's the developed world that's not trusting in institutions. And we can see that government and media are really seen as fueling this cycle of distrust. So when we actually looked at whether these institutions are a source of false and misleading information or reliable source of information, what we found here is the business is actually seen as a reliable source of information. Interestingly, media is split, government is seen as a false source of information, and NGOs are seen as trusted.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What?
As you can see here, governments are really not necessarily
I'm just
trusted.
saying, like, he's saying here for, I got a mail from Scott to, regarding the live workshop which is tomorrow, to register with CLG Campus.
Yeah, so CLG Campus is the campus that's going through the measurement workshop that I'll be doing tomorrow.
Climate change, food shortages, energy shortages, and, again, going back to the job loss one, perhaps,
so I guess I have to register.
Collected this data involved.
Yeah, I think so.
For a number of companies, at least in the United States, actually, ended up sort of doing layoffs. So perhaps some of these fears were actually founded in truth. We also found that institutional leaders are distrusted, and this is particularly true. And those on the call take note. This is particularly true for CEOs, for journalists, for government leaders. However, things like my CEO, for example, or my neighbors, or my coworkers are trusted. So as we can see, trust is local, and trust is within my institution that I belong to.
Trust is local. That's going to be a big issue for online community, because that means the onus for all of those trust factors are now on us independently. It's our job to manage the information diets, the trust factors, the bridging capital.
This really illustrates the mass-class divide, how there's really an inequality is really fueling distrust of institutions. So if you look in the top quartile, which is over here on the left, you can see that the vast majority of people in the top quartile of countries trust institutions. However, when you look at the bottom quartile, the number flips, and the vast majority don't trust institutions. So you can really see here it's income inequality that is driving distrust. I find this slide really, really interesting, and it's that trust at home doesn't guarantee trust abroad. So what we can see here is that people trust companies that are headquartered in their own markets. So, for example, if you look at the United States, 65% trust companies headquartered in the US. For France, that number is 59%. And then when you start looking at the gap between trust in domestic companies versus trust in foreign companies, that's where it starts to fall. So, for example, in the United States, foreign trust goes to 55 versus 65. For example, if you start looking at places like India and China, foreign trust in China and India stand at 30 4 points and 32 points respectively, whereas domestic trust in companies headquartered in those markets stand at 90 and 89. So there really is a trust deficit specifically in China and India, but overall people trust companies headquartered in their own markets, not necessarily ones that are abroad.
Chloe, I can definitely hear the echo when I'm doing the active study on this. Trying to work on that right now.
Polarization are distrust, a weak social fabric, and a feeling of unfairness and economic.
It's not going great, is it?
So polarization is a cycle, and it leads to further distrust. So when people say their country is not very divided, they tend to trust. They trust business, they trust NGOs, they trust the government. When they say it's divided but not entrenched, they still trust business and NGOs. And when they start to see countries as significantly polarized, then they stop trusting. Even business becomes neutral, and they stop trusting NGOs, media, and the government. So polarization is leading to further distrust in institutions. And we can see people today believe that we are more divided than in the past. The majority, 15 of 26 countries agree that our country is more divided today than it was in the past. And the average here is 53%. But if you look here again, it's really that developed world where we can really see sort of polarization and being divided starting to take hold. You can also see the weakening of the social fabric. Again, we asked, the lack of civility and mutual respect today is the worst I've ever seen. 65% agreed. And then when we said the social fabric that once held this country together has grown too weak to serve as a foundation for unity and common purpose, 62% agreed.
Oof.
So again,
that's going to be a really, really important part of local community development and infrastructure. So deliberative democracy just became the most important thing in the new year.
But also heightened risk for business. So as we see here, again, third year in a row, only business is seen as competent and ethical, and frankly, there's been a rise in ethics for business. People's employers are most trusted. If you look at the numbers for business, NGOs, government, and media, they are in the 50s to low 60s. When people ask about trust in my employer, it stands at 77%. That's a huge advantage. So for those of you on the call who are working with a company's employees on communications, your employees can be a huge advantage for you as you think about communications campaigns and as you think about building trust. And then among those who feel polarized, my employer is really the only trusted institution. So again, it's 81 points among those not very divided. Among those who say polarized divisions are entrenched, they still trust their employer, even though they don't trust other institutions. So again, employees can be your key. Employees, big trust advantage there. Consumers and employees are also pressuring business to stand up for them. So we found, actually we did a special report.
Okay, so I just switched over to my headphones.
The 63% said
how do we
they're going to buy or advocate for brands based on their beliefs and values. And also they say having a societal impact is a strong expectation or deal breaker when considering a job. So it actually is influencing whether people are buying or advocating for brands and whether people are taking jobs. So again, you can really see why, having trust and having values that are consistent with your customers or your employees are so important.
Okay, so
again,
how is this? Is this any better for all of you?
And people want more societal engagement from business, not less. So we can see here, we asked, on addressing each societal issue, is business not doing enough or are they overstepping? And what they found consistently is consistent with your customers or your employees are so important. Energy shortage, healthcare access, trustworthy information, and workforce reskilling. The vast majority believe the business is not actually doing enough versus overstepping. So again, these are so we can see here, we asked, on addressing each societal issue, is business not doing enough or are they overstepping? Because what again, people want values that are consistent with what they want your customers. And again, these are the numbers in the United States, so a little bit less than global, but it still very much holds in the US. So navigating a polarized world. What are the expectations of CEOs in today's world? Well, we actually found that CEOs are expected to take action on employees, on climate, and on areas like discrimination. So the vast majority actually said they expect CEOs to take a public stand on areas like treatment of employees, climate change, discrimination, wealth gap, and immigration. Treatment of employees and climate change, the numbers are really high. So again, these are key areas. We actually found where CEOs are expected to take action on employees to lead if they aren't already. And people also want CEOs in a lot of ways to sort of hold what we call divisive forces accountable. So they believe that CEOs are obligated to defend facts and to expose questionable science. They want them to pull, this is interesting, they want them to pull advertising money from platforms that spread misinformation. And they also believe that companies can actually strengthen the social fabric if they support politicians and media that build consensus. And again, these are the US numbers. You can see they very much track to the global numbers as well. And then finally, trustworthy information actually insulates business action from politicization. So for those of you who are saying, oh no, climate change, it's seen as, part of the left and it's too liberal. But what are sort of our, and again, these are the US numbers. You can see they very much track in order to act without to the global numbers as well. Politicized. It's really important to sort of align with what facts are and with trustworthy information. So again, what we found here, some ways to act, again, without being sort of aligned with one party or another, are be a trustworthy information source, base your actions on science. This maybe seems obvious, but don't align with only one political party, act on the same values over time, and link actions to staying competitive. So these are all the things you can do to act and then not sort of be seen as sort of a, at least in the United States, a tool of the left or the right. And then, again, people really want companies and CEOs to help improve economic optimism. So people say that CEOs are obligated to pay a fair wage, ensure their home community is safe and thriving, to pay fair corporate taxes, and to retrain employees. So again, these are all areas where business has the license to lead and the license to step up. And it's not, again, a nice to have. These are things that, again, they're seen as increasingly, perhaps not table stakes, but really things that it can increase trust in a company. And they also want to use the power of brands to create a shared identity. So in a lot of ways, what people say is that they believe that brands celebrating what brings us together and emphasizing our common interests would actually strengthen the social fabric. So in a lot of ways, brands actually do have the ability to make a change, to bring people together, to sort of help counteract a lot of the factors of polarization in today's world. So finally, I just wanted to give sort of a key takeaways based on the data we just heard. So first, it's just that business needs to continue to lead. Business holds the mantle of greater expectation and responsibility. And you can use your advantage in areas like climate change, diversity,
quite literally all
retraining
of that
your workers,
is community.
paying a fair wage. These are all things that business really has the license to lead on. Secondly, is to collaborate with government. What we found is that the best results come when business and government work together and not independently. So it's important to really build consensus to align and with government, with politicians. Use your advantage in areas like climate change, NGOs as well.
Diversity, all of
retraining your
that is
workers,
community.
paying a fair wage. These are all things that business really has sort of the credibility to lead. Finally, it's important to restore economic optimism. So again, we can see that a grim economic view has been a driver and an outcome for polarization. So we believe it's important for companies and CEOs to invest in fair compensation, training, invest in your local communities, again, as a way to sort of address that mass class divide. And then finally, it's to advocate for the truth. We saw here that my employer is the most trusted institution, and my CEO is more trusted than a journalist, than a different CEO. And so it's really up to companies to advocate for the truth. So providing trustworthy information, leaning on science, all of these areas are ways for your actions to be taken not as politicized, but actually truly as investing in bettering the communities in which you operate. So we'll just end here with the top 10 takeaways, which again, we've gone through extensively. But anyways, with that, just want to wrap up and turn it over to Eleanor and our panelists to have a discussion about what we found and really how to sort of provide sort of the greater context around how some of this data can work in practice.
Thank you, Margot. I want to start just broadly. Oscar, I'm going to start with you. I think business leaders would be surprised and maybe a little relieved to know that they are the most trusted institution. So now that business leaders have this trust, now that brands have this trust, how can they make the most of it?
I think first and foremost by acting on their promises and commitments to their stakeholders. It's wonderful that we've seen, I think increasingly more and more CEOs and companies go on record on a whole host of issues of importance in our society. But the public is also very savvy, and they also recognize when there's a significant gap between a corporation's deeds and their words. And so I think the smartest CEOs understand this, and they're backed up by senior leadership teams who can appreciate this as well. And they're becoming ever more, I think, mindful of when they're putting statements out there or pledges or words or promises, that they're backing them up with actions too.
I've also talked with you, Ariel, about the business imperative of these efforts. I know it's something that you've thought through at your time at Ariel Investments. So can you talk to us a little bit about why taking a stand or why being so public facing on societal issues is a business imperative, and how does it maintain trust?
Sure. First, I wanted to thank you all for having me. I'll say my first reaction to the data is that I'm not surprised that
investments. So can you talk to us a little bit about why taking a stand or why being so public
when you think about the reckoning after the murder of George Floyd
is a business imperative, and how does it maintain trust?
This was the first time when all the legal systems were purportedly in place, and it was really up to the number one employers of the country, as well as the number one supply chain partners of the country to actually act. So, we call it Civil Rights 3.0. 1.0 was the Emancipation Proclamation, 2.0 was the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in the 60s, and now 3.0 is where we find ourselves today, where really the onus of the societal issues that we're facing is at the feet of corporate America. We are the ones that are in a position to create equality for people who are looking to secure financial security for their families. We are the ones that can fund and create economic opportunity for minority-owned businesses. And we are the ones that are expected to have a reaction to any and everything that happens. I will caveat that, though, by saying that empty statements, we all know this, we're communicators. Empty statements mean nothing. And one of the litmus tests that I put my team through at Ariel is, before we decide to post anything or send something out, do we have something to add? We don't always. I think that people actually assume because we're the first Black-owned asset management firm in the US that we are somehow meant to cleanse every wrongdoing or meant to have a point of view about everything that's going on in the world. And there are many cases where we don't. For example, I remember it was Indigenous Peoples Day, and the team said, we're preparing this post. And I said, well, what are we saying? Are we just saying Happy Indigenous Peoples Day? That's really empty. And where we landed was we actually decided to direct our followers to other institutions that we felt had resources, expertise, and really tangible resources on how to be allies and be activists in the space. And so I think there's no shame, especially if you're a communications leader,
I think one of the biggest references
encouraging your team to really focus on directing your stakeholder audiences to people who know more than you. That's your responsibility, is to share knowledge. It's not your responsibility to virtue signal and say, we posted, we checked the box. No one's really looking for that. And this new generation has really shown us that we are always being scrutinized, and phony statements are very easily sniffed out these days.
The report also shows, though, that in polarized nations, which I would argue in the US we count as that, businesses face more risk for speaking out and for wading in. So maybe Oscar or Margot, how do you advise
scrutinized
your
and
clients? So like, I don't feel
phony.
comfortable. This isn't my job. What approach do you take with them? And then what advice do you have for communicators who might be struggling with that same issue? If they know that they need to speak out, they know that they need to do something, but they don't have the buy-in from the top.
Well, I think it starts with being anchored in a company's purpose. And
I was like, I don't know what this Edelman thing is. Oh, come along. Hey, why not?
Having clarity.
Have you not heard of Edelman
those
before?
two things are fundamental to, I think, sorting through those sorts of questions.
So I think they're going on 22
and I think Ariel
years
said it
now,
great.
and they're a
what are you
public relations
contributing
company
to
who basically just runs the same survey every year, and it's
are you seen as a
on
credible
what level
participant
and
entering
in
into
what
it,
categories
right?
Is business
so
most
I
or
think
less
for
trusted?
communicators
So are
who
they
are
more
trying
or
to
less
navigate
trusted than the
these
government,
things,
than nonprofits,
I would start
than
there.
journalism?
As a
You know what? Oh yeah. I think I remember that
for,
they'll do like
helping
how journalists are
internal
viewed
clients try to
versus
figure out
lawyers and all that
is
kind
this
of
the
stuff.
right issue or topic
and
to be
every
investing
year
our
it just becomes
capital
increasingly
in.
more interesting.
Margot, I don't know if you
because
build on that.
like last year was the first year
so
that
for
businesses
example,
had more trust factors
when,
than governments or nonprofits.
One of the things that we
and
counsel
now
our
it's
clients
actually
was
like
start with your own employees.
gained a lead.
Talk
this
about
year,
what you're going to
so.
at least start, within your own employee base. Talk
That's
about what you're
crazy.
going to do for the women around the country. What are the medical benefits you're going to continue to offer? What are you going to do for them?
I
so
did
again,
a video
going back
on
to sort of
YouTube
trust
about
is
it last
local,
year,
trust
and I
stands with your
want to do a
employer.
video
I think
this year, but
at the very least,
I've
starting
just
what
let
you're going to
the
do for your
YouTube channel
employees
just
around an
crash and
issue is a
burn this
very,
year, so I'm hoping
I think
that I can get
that's
back to
table
it
stakes
soon.
for how
I mean,
to
you have a lot of
approach
things
and
going
talk
on. I
about something. And
understand
then beyond that, I think
Am I doing this wrong? Because I mean, I see them, but I
it
don't
needs
hear
to relate,
anything.
and Ariel said it needs to relate back to the company's
that is a great question.
sort of core
I've been
purpose
having some
and
audio
core mission.
issues.
So if you're in the technology industry,
And I don't even know if your video's on because all I
you're,
see are two
part
blue
of
squares that are going
technology
around
does
and
is
around.
automate jobs.
Oh yeah.
You need
that's
to
because my camera's
invest in
taken by the
reskilling
live
and retraining
stream.
workers, and that's very credible because
I don't usually do this. I just happened to see your message. I was like, I'm bored. I got nothing going on.
Really
I'm
making sure
unemployed.
that you're not sort of coming out of left field with something, but that it really aligns with your business mission and business goals and values.
Now I got double vision.
Really
it's all good. It doesn't matter. I just want to be polite if you had yours on and I was
really
kind of
a key audience, if not the prized audience now. And Treaty, I want to get you in on this conversation because I know you have
I just want to make sure,
am
I supposed to be able to hear them or?
Yeah, you should be able to hear them.
And you
I can only hear you and me and
more academic and policy focused.
Maybe it's a setting I need to do.
So how do you think about that as not only being a trusted CEO,
I've been
but
struggling
also
with audio the whole time as well. So
no, they're totally muted.
Thanks so much, Eleanor. It's wonderful to be with everybody.
Oh yeah,
let me give
volume
an
might be a
example.
thing.
When the pandemic started, we were fortunate enough at the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation to have our president be a physician and also an expert in infectious diseases. So what we decided to do is for our regular Tuesday stand-up meetings, our president would stand up.
No, they're totally muted.
Thank you so much.
I just kind of stepped in. I had a notification. I thought
he knew was coming out regarding the pandemic and COVID-19. This occurred from March 2020 all the way
to
January, and our offices didn't fully open until January.
Can you not hear it either, Tony?
I
can hear you and I can hear Adrian. I know that there was a couple people on stage here. You know, I'm just a hobbyist, but I'm always willing to listen in on.
Cell phone number.
I just what I figured is I don't know what I don't really follow Edelman that much, but I was here for like the hot takes from Samantha as it was happening.
Correct.
But you know, hey, you know, I don't. I mean, I have no idea what these people are saying. For all I know, she could be saying, "I bought the best donut yesterday. It was lovely."
I feel like that's how we can show up.
I'm trying to figure that out right now. I think audio isn't pushing through.
And as a communicator, I was delighted to see him be
That's correct. Yeah, you're talking about that stream that's on the screen right now.
Through this whole time.
Yeah, I don't hear any audio from them either.
But not every CEO.
I'm definitely hearing it.
You know what? If we're really quiet, I can kind of hear it very quiet.
And the report also shows, as Mario pointed out,
that's probably
CEOs are expected to combat and question science that might not be totally rooted in fact, right? So, Treaty, is there anything that your organization is doing to help educate business leaders or policymakers? Can you talk to us about?
Does it sound like Zoom when you have to share? You have to click like computer audio or some like weird thing?
I can talk specifically about what I'm doing. I've been teaching scientists and
I don't do any streaming on Discord, so I can't really guide you. I don't know.
And the way to do that is as a
I actually just
scientist
opted out of a
myself,
job where
very
they wanted
comfortable with
some Discord
uncertainty.
guru.
But
I'm
the
like,
general public is
I've got a
not. And
server
when a
that I run,
scientist
but it's
doesn't
like
know
with
how to
4
clearly
of my
communicate
friends for
uncertainty, it
fantasy
degrades trust.
Yeah.
And
sports.
there's suspicion that's
Yeah,
introduced,
and
right? So
Mary
it's training
Blessing
scientists to
was
start with
she was able to
consensus
hear it
science, what we know
before.
for sure, walking your
Interesting.
audience through step by step.
So I wonder if I'm just a moron who doesn't know how to use this
Science is
computer.
evolving. I used the analogy of holding the hand of your
I'm
audience,
listening in, and you
not
guys
talking down
sounds like
to
an
them or
interesting. I
not
didn't have
talking
anything really to
in
do
a way
here, so I was
that
kind of
Yeah.
going to
makes
listen
them
in.
feel
That was
less
I
intelligent.
loved watching her
Right, so
back in
it
the day. I think
starts
it was
with
on
that. It starts
CFE
with
is
really
what I've seen her
training
on.
Well,
the
here's
individuals
what
who've
might be
chosen to be in
viable
science
if you
and
were to go
technology to better
to
communicate
the
their
YouTube
approach and
live
their approach to
stream.
science.
Audio
Does
is
that
definitely
help?
working there.
Okay,
That's
so do
helpful.
just go,
I think along with science,
Socially
one
Constructed
thing that
YouTube?
we're seeing
Yeah.
that's very, very uncertain is
Okay,
the economy. And
grabbing the
Margot,
link
you
now.
pointed out, you know, the economic optimism is collapsing even in developed
Economic
countries.
optimism is
Ariel,
collapsing.
maybe
Wow,
as
that
a
is
resident
a phrase.
financial communicator, you could jump in and
Economic.
talk
What was it?
about
Sorry again.
what you're seeing when it comes to
Economic
economic
optimism
optimism,
is
maybe
collapsing.
how your leadership, how your firm is communicating
that's
during
great.
these uncertain times.
I'm trying to find a job,
And how
people.
you
Stay
can
happy.
continue to garner trust, even though nobody
Well,
seems
yeah,
to really
you
know
know, poor people
what's
in tech
happening,
right
what's
now.
coming next, and everybody's
What,
a little on edge
where
with
am I
job
supposed to be
security
seeing this
and
link,
the like.
Samantha?
So I'm grabbing it for
Sure.
you right now.
I think
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was looking and then I
the
stopped
one thing that
typing
we
in
try
Socially
to make sure that
Constructed on
people
YouTube.
understand is that the market is cyclical. And so when people say they don't know what's next,
All
we
right,
actually have
so
history to
in
point
the
to.
Discord chat, I just posted
and
it.
I think often that is lost on
Which
people,
channel?
which is that,
Sorry, guys.
you know, for example, if we look at
there's
the crypto
actually a
crash,
chat available here
many
in the
people
live streams
during
now,
a survey
but let me
that we
private
developed
message it to you as well.
claimed that they thought
No,
crypto was
I'll
a
find
safer
it.
bet
I mean,
than the
hey,
stock
it's
market.
forcing me to
It's
learn.
still crazy to me that
So it's
a
up
new
in the top
investor would
right-hand
think
corner. You'll
that
see
something
show
with zero
chat
track record
right
is somehow more
underneath the
trustworthy
X.
than something that has decades and decades of a track record.
Oh,
So I
here we
think
go.
what we
Going
try to
live
do
with
is just point
Edelman's.
to history the most,
Okay, let's see.
point to moments in time where
Oh,
we've
there we
seen
go.
resilience or bounces back.
I got it.
But we also don't try to minimize concerns, right?
Okay,
People are
And
scared.
Tony, I'm
People
sending it for you
have
too.
issues that
Thank
they
you.
are facing day to day that are very real.
So now I can
and so
see
one
you.
of the things that we try to
Yay.
emphasize the most is
In the bottom
humility.
corner.
So you may have seen a op-ed that Melody and John, our co-CEOs, wrote that I supported in the Wall Street Journal. And one of the subheaders in the article was, "Everyone thinks they know, but nobody knows." And we wanted to say that because even though we're being tasked with writing this op-ed and we're meant to be seen as experts, we do not want to pretend to know all the answers.
Oh, I
And
didn't
so
realize
as
everyone could hear me on the
communicators, we
YouTube
have to
stream.
be
Good thing I
as
didn't say anything
forthright about
bad.
what we absolutely do not know and cannot predict.
Yeah,
at the
you
same
actually
time
joined the
as
actual
pointing
stream,
to
so.
the information that we do have. I know that that's pretty abstract and not as promissory as you were expecting, but that's really all we've got at this point. We do not want to pretend to know.
That's really helpful, and I think one of the things that you pointed to is just being transparent and having candor in your messaging. I think that's something we're seeing more and more of, especially when it comes to internal communication.
Candor and transparency in
but
messaging.
the
It's gonna
report
be
also shows
critical.
that there is this divide and this division within trust, especially when it comes to different income levels. And often we see that, kind of translate in the workplace too, right? Senior leadership is totally bought in. So Oscar, I see that you're nodding enthusiastically. Talk to me about your thoughts there and how do you get everybody in the company on board?
Well, I think it's cultivating.
What's funny is I'm getting
awareness.
everything delayed, so
And
I'm having to watch your stream to hear what's actually happening.
That
Oh no.
not everybody.
So I'm not hearing the original
economy
stream. Maybe I should go to
in
the
same
original
way
stream.
these days, right? And that continues. I mean, you saw it right in the immediate
Is this
wake
public,
of the pandemic. There were
I
economic
think
winners
it
and there were
was,
economic losers,
subscription
and
only,
in
but
some
you
ways,
might
in
be
very
able to get
striking
it.
ways, in certain categories.
I can send you my invite link.
Of the global
No,
economy,
it's fine.
and that has continued on into today's economy, which, depending on who you speak to, is on its way to a clear recession, or now some people are talking about a no landing economy where we may not have a hard landing or a soft
Here's
landing. We
the,
may just enjoy this period
Zoom
of
link
pretty
to hop on
steady
their
growth,
Zoom.
and yet against a backdrop of an inflationary environment. But yet, consumer spending strong, sentiment has been on an uptick, and but it's
so
not universally experienced.
Economic trust has gone down, things but like student loan debt, understanding of the local economy has increased.
There's a lot of people who have fallen out of the labor market, and so on. So I think the key is meeting your stakeholders where they are and recognizing that they're not monolithic in how they're experiencing the world.
So meeting your stakeholders where they are is a great kind of segue into the next topic that I want to talk about, which is businesses as
thanks for letting me know, Chloe. It looks like audio's working perfectly fine.
I read somewhere that
the
internal newsletter
was working
is the
fine
most
on Discord until I made changes to the YouTube channel, and now it's the reverse.
So I'd be curious to hear from any of you who want to jump in just about the importance of internal comms and maybe the uptick that you've seen in owned content. Ariel, you mentioned an op-ed that you all placed, but how are you all thinking about owned content and messaging not only to your employees but to the broader the various stakeholders without going through the media?
Well, I think, and I say this as an Edelman alum, one of the things that we're always told and that we preach to clients, when I was on the consulting side, is that thought leadership, owned content is king.
Adrian,
there of course is a dislocation in trust in traditional media. We all know that, right? But the internal audience is one of my most favorite things to talk about because it's often, I think, neglected, particularly as it relates to when people think about rolling out material announcements. So if your business is doing a pivot of any kind, or say it's something like an M&A transaction or a large scale restructuring or anything like that, I've always experienced that CEOs think outward first before inward. And when I joined Ariel, one of the first things I did was consolidate what were previously 6 to 7 groups into one. So marketing, communications
groups are going to be really, really important moving into the new
public
era,
affairs, government affairs, events, philanthropy. I'm sure the number vacillates. I can't remember what. But the one thing that was left out that did not have a practice area was employee communications. HR was kind of doing it, but there was no newsletter to speak of. There was no infrastructure in place, and that was what we built when I joined. And the feedback that we've gotten since we decided to prioritize
as an internal communications practitioner, I say
really
extraordinary.
So there are a few things we've done. Just some. I know that we're talking very big 100%. Level, but I think it would be nice to actually just give some tangible tools for folks on the phone. A few things we did during the pandemic was we bumped up our all staff meetings. So that's easy because we have 123 employees. That's very tiny compared to some of these other institutions. But with webinars and all kinds of things, you can do these more frequently. So we meet. We committed during the pandemic to meet every single month, all staff. And then now we are quarterly. So we have promised to give a readout from every single board meeting to all of our employees so that they know what was talked about, what may or may not change. That has made a huge difference. We send in a recording as well as a written summary after every meeting for those who couldn't make it. We also have a newsletter, which includes sort of a myriad of things. It's things that are happening at the company and benefits and resources, but then also press you may have missed. A lot of employees are actually not involved in the communications framework, so they don't know even that their CEO may have written something in the Wall Street Journal. People forget to share those external earned media hits internally and say, this is the conversation we're having with our stakeholders. This is what we're pushing. This is our agenda. So we have a spotlight on, it's called In Case You Missed It, and it has all of the press and speaking engagements and things where our leaders were out in the market, just to bring the outside in. And then we also do an employee spotlight. So, you'd be surprised, even a staff of 123, there are people that folks have never met. And so we always spotlight someone. We ask them a few questions. But these touch points really, really matter. And we've seen an uptick in employee engagement because we do a survey very frequently. And, since we started some of these initiatives, people feel a lot more connected to the company than they did previously. So I say this all to say, never forget about employee communications. And I would also say words matter. So we stopped using the term employees. We don't call them employees. We call them teammates. If I see the word employee in an email, I lose it. People hear from me. I wonder how I feel about that. Same thing with like Starbucks. They call their employees partners. Think of ways as a communicator that you can actually up-level the conversation around what your individual contributors mean to you, and sometimes it's just really what you call them.
For Starbucks.
So that was another little tidbit at the end, but I hope that helps.
I'm not sure how I would feel
Trudy,
about
I'm curious to know if you have any tips on how to engage team members.
Sure. Hi, Eleanor. I loved what Ariel said about, in case you missed it, we do a similar thing where we pull in not only various announcements, but also perspectives from our employees as well as perspectives from our grantees to get engagement on the diversity of views on a particular topic. Eleanor, I've missed the question. What was the question you wanted me to?
Well, that actually was very, very helpful, because you both have brought up, how you are sharing media hits internally. And again, my yes, but is that, the Edelman report shows that media isn't trusted. So are you rethinking your communication strategy? Do you need us? Do you need the media?
Well, so just on that point, I mean, what we actually found is that media, it's polarized. So Dems actually trust media, Republicans don't. So it really depends on sort of where you sit in the country, and frankly, what political affiliation you're with, as to whether you trust traditional media or you don't.
Barry
so I
has a
think
good
blanket
point.
statement, people don't trust journalists, is not
a proactive
not
strategy
accurate.
is necessary
It's
to
very
manage a
polarized
crisis,
as well.
but it's still got to remain flexible,
That's
especially in the wake of
as
a
a member
market crash.
of the media. But I am curious
important.
about just the way that the media landscape is shifting. How are you thinking about that? Say you have a client who's based in a red state. Are you focused on local media over national media? How does trust come into play with your media relations efforts?
It's a great question. I really don't think it's about communicating internally versus communicating to reporters. I think it's 360. So you need to think about, okay, what is my strategy for the media? And specifically, if it is going to be in a topic that is more polarized, what's my strategy for media that might be more in the middle of the country versus on the coasts? In the same way, you'd have to think about, okay, what's my, again, I've worked mostly in the technology industry. What's my strategy for sort of, trade press versus more top tier press? You have to sort of think that way as well around sort of polarization. Then you also need to think about, okay, what's my strategy for communicating to my employees, whether it's leveraging internal newsletters, whether it's a webinar with the CEO, whether it's town halls. Employees can be your best advocates. What's my, way to leverage new influencers, whether it's creators on TikTok or whether it's, people who are sort of key stakeholders, who are heads of NGOs or who are academics, who can be sort of third-party validators for me. So it's really about thinking about the entire communications landscape rather than just sort of, saying, we're going to do an exclusive with the reporter and then we're going to issue our press release and we're done. So it's become a lot more complicated, but it doesn't mean you can ignore any group over another.
I think Margot's exactly right. I tend to be a very old school millennial. So no matter what we do, I always think about what the media angle is. So how we can make lemonade.
I do too.
But I will say that we focus on the audience, who is reading what. So for example, recently PBS came to us about something that we're working on that has a pretty specific audience. And even though PBS has millions and millions of viewers, I know exactly who our audience is. They are not watching that show on PBS. They're just not. Yeah. And so we said no, because it just wasn't hitting that core stakeholder that we want to give us money. So you really just have to think about where you want to move the needle and what your business objectives are. I think a lot of communicators think about the communication strategy first and how to make a splash before they think about the business priorities. That has to follow. You have to start with the business priorities. So are we raising a fund? Are we trying to bring in, portfolio companies? Are we looking
I'm
to
also really
get
concerned about that,
whatever it is? Then from there you determine what the media form might be. Not just the biggest splash or something that looks nice or something that you want to print out for your grandmother.
If you now have to connect the information diet of a community's health to the business ROI,
I want to ask one more question
now the business has
before we
direct
open it up
control over what information is actually exposed in that community.
Margot, you touched on this during your presentation about
to some extent important,
global
but
trust.
It also
and it used
has
to
a
be,
tendency
it still is,
to
such
upon people's
a badge of
ability
honor to be such a global
across
company.
communities.
But you point out that trust varies across the globe, and trust at home doesn't necessarily equal trust abroad. And I feel like tech companies are particularly vulnerable to this trust gap. So can you talk about that?
It's true. And actually, we have some additional data points on that. We did a deep dive on trust in tech that we came out with on the fall in the fall. And I think some really interesting data points there is when we actually dug into why people don't trust tech companies headquartered in foreign markets. It wasn't because they were worried about product issues or the product not working. It was because they were worried about data privacy and security. They were worried about IP. So it was much more about sort of data and intellectual property versus I'm going to buy a product and it's not going to work. So I just thought that was sort of an interesting sort of additional color on it. I mean, all you need to do is just read the news today to understand the world sort of isn't where it was 10 years ago. You have
Tony, you're right.
There's
handling bias.
War in the Ukraine. There's increasing tensions through the United States versus China. In a lot of ways, companies seem to have to choose whether they're going to have a China strategy or a U.S. strategy, but you can't necessarily have both. And so I think that makes it just even harder to have sort of a global message. And in many ways, I don't necessarily think companies anymore can have a global message. I think you need to have sort of a message that's localized to the country that you're operating in, or within some countries like the U.S. might say that global messages within the specific geography within
That's incredible.
the U.S. that you're looking at. So again, it just becomes that much more complicated for us communications professionals, maybe than it was 10, 15 years ago in sort of the era of globalization.
Thank you. I'm going to jump into some of the questions that have been asked in the chat. Guy is asking, is the world in fact more divided today than it is in the past? Is this a long-term trend? I know, what is this, the 20-somethingth year of the trust survey?
23rd.
23rd. So what is the long-term trend? What have you seen over these 23 years?
That's a great question. I mean, listen, I wish I could have a crystal ball and tell you the future because I'd be very rich. I'd just put all my money into the stock market. But listen, it does seem like the world has become more distrusting. This is particularly true, I think, in developed markets. Also, that mass class divide is something that's only become has only increased over time. So again, sort of the rising income inequality really around the world has resulted in greater trust in institutions among those who are wealthy and much less among those who are not. We do see sort of there is sort of a schism between East and West. For example, the data points around sort of not trusting companies headquartered in foreign markets. So I think those are trends we've seen accelerating. Although over time, if you look in business, for example, different sectors have been trusted or not trusted that really reflects what's going on in the economy. So for example, if you looked at after the 2008 financial crisis, financial services, and Oscar can speak to this directly, had a massive crash. And it's really had to rebuild over the last, decade plus.
Yeah, I agree.
Whereas
Tony,
if you look at the technology sector, for example, there used to be a halo of trust around the tech sector. It
global,
was your
but
phone.
Act local.
It was your computer.
That. That's Rachel
and then increasingly, technology became known as social media, or became known for displacing your jobs, and there became sort of more of a fear and distrust around the technology sector. Health, for example, had a huge bump during the pandemic, and then now has gone down. So a lot of the data, I think, sort of tracks what's going on in the world. But again, it's just sort of interesting to see, numbers around it versus just sort of a feeling you might have.
And we have another disruptor. Sorry to cut you off, Oscar, but maybe you can weigh in on this one. It's a question from Helene in the chat, which is, what are your predictions for what AI can and will do to trust? Any thoughts?
Well, I'm now a chat GPT answering you right now. No, but who knows? Maybe we're going to have a chat GPT webinar in the future.
Chat GPT
I think
webinar.
Margot called out something very interesting. Is that even though this we've been living in this relative period over the last couple of years of distrust in some core institutions in society, and certainly things have felt more polarized, things also can change. That dynamic you described between tech and finance, absolutely. I live the finance part. We've all witnessed the swing in fortunes in tech, and we may see even more distrust developing in that part of the global economy.
Where's the touch realness?
Given the
That's interesting. I would
geopolitical
definitely love to
tensions
hear
between
more
us
about
and
that.
China, given the fears many have over new technologies like AI. So I think what it means for us as communicators is that we have to be increasingly aware of the cultural currents that are unfolding out there and how they impact perceptions of, institutions, including the companies that we play a role in leading.
And just some additional data points just around going back to AI. What's interesting, again, going back to the survey that we did in the fall, AI is trusted in developing markets, and it's not trusted in developed markets. And that's the same with emerging technologies overall, whether it's
I also
blockchain
feel like that's
or
mirrored by
vehicles. In the developing world, there's high levels of trust. In the developed world, there's not. So again, it's sort of an interesting schism there, where again, if you're in the communications industry and you need to communicate about AI, just sort of know that there's differences between the two.
Yeah, one of our values at the agency is the courage to be curious, and I think we as communications professionals have to be even more curious than ever about all the things going on in our society today, if we're going to be the counselors that we aspire to be to our clients.
Yeah. AI would be great.
A question from Larry in the Q&A section is, any thoughts on how government can restore trust? I know.
Listen, I think it's not unlike how the most trusted companies earn trust. You just have to deliver the goods. You have to say what you promise. You have to act, and you have to execute well. And
deliver
I think
the goods,
what has
utility,
built
say
up
what you
over
promise,
recent years is
transparency,
this
act and do well. That's
sense
merit.
that
That is
government
all social currency theory.
sometimes
there's
can't shoot straight,
notoriety,
or
there's
is
linking
inefficient,
capital, bonding
or
capital.
doesn't deliver through
All
on
of
the
that is
promises
us,
it makes. And you've had this pent-up sentiment over time. Now
Pent-up
get
sentiments?
almost extrapolated to a whole other level through the underlying polarized nature of our political discourse. So I think if we could, I don't know, maybe reintroduce the word compromise again as one that is actually good for our society, and government can deliver on things that stakeholders and citizens want, maybe that's the beginning.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. And I also think an increase in public-private partnerships would be useful, right? So the study actually showed that people trust private institutions more. So maybe governments could capitalize on that. Part of my remit also includes government affairs at my firm. And so, just a quick stat, in the past 2 years, we've done about 150 to 200 meetings with elected officials on the Hill, just to not only discuss our concerns and what we're focused on, but actually to bring actionable strategic ideas. And I think a more receptive community on the Hill would be really useful, because I don't think that governments can do it alone, and I also don't think that corporations can do it alone. So I think just more acknowledgement of that, the need for those partnerships would help everybody, and I think bolster trust with individuals who clearly trust the brands that they've put their lives in the hands of.
On the same topic of partnership. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add that I'm actually in DC right now for a civic science convening.
The theory about public-government partnerships is flawed to its core.
With policymakers,
fascinating,
to give them that insight, both the scientists' insight from what are the conditions under which policymakers are operating, and also the policymakers some of the insider view of what the science is, and helping those who are interested to be boundary spanners, scientists who want to have one leg in the realm of making a difference in the bigger picture, helping them have more opportunities. I think it's going to be helpful to all.
So along those lines of partnership, Sharon wants to know, NGOs are seen as a trusted source of info. Oh, no, I'm sorry. She said, can you pinpoint the types of issues that would be ideal for businesses to work with? This is reminding me so much of
Peter Block's book NGOs on developing proper communities.
Ariel, you're shaking your head.
Well, I only have one right now, but it's such a hot button issue, which is the racial wealth disparity. Again, corporations are the employers, the number one employers of people who are aiming to secure financial security for their families. And so all the wonderful initiatives that folks on the Hill try to roll out cannot be done without institutional cooperation. And so I'd love to see NGOs partner with institutions more to get those ideas to the places they need to be, and also force some action from corporations. And then, so racial wealth disparity, number one, and I think number two would be environmental issues. I mean, same place where I think institutions are the ones that are responsible for most of the negative impact. Really big issue. On we're going to need to find ways Earth, to support and fund those government you can focus on individual households as much as you want, but really real way for federal government behemoths that are responsible for the carbon footprint. So I think those are the two areas where I'd love to see as many public-private partnerships as possible.
From the chat, Dr. Karen Lindsay has asked, what trends have you seen along age demographics? Is that something that the report looks into?
It definitely does. I'm just trying to remember back. I know we have a few slides on it. I would definitely have to pull the data. But I know, for example, for Gen Z,
but I'm going to be hanging on for a good 10 to 15 minutes for us to talk in the community Discord.
So if you're for example, income inequality, go to these are all things that Gen Z cares deeply about, and they are very, very much oriented around purpose. And they're much more likely to work for a company that has purpose. They're much more likely to buy from a brand that has purpose. And they deeply care about issues like climate. So Gen Z, purpose is huge
Tony,
for them. It's a really major factor in buying decisions and employment decisions.
And when it comes down to their expectations, they have the highest expectations. They expect the most action, and they are also the generation most likely to be influenced from a consumer behavior standpoint with respect to how they perceive whether or not institutions or companies or brands are living up to some of the societal challenges we're facing.
All right, we're starting to almost get to time. So I'd love to just wrap up with all of you. If you could have the people watching have one takeaway, what is your one takeaway that you want them?
Let me know what your takeaways are in the chat.
I'll start with you, Treaty.
We can use them to structure our discussion in the Discord.
Stay curious, ask questions, be a scientist, be comfortable with uncertainty, but be clear in your communication.
Margot?
I think the key takeaway is really that business has the license to lead, and that for all of us who are, CCOs at companies or advising clients, I think it's important for people to, encourage businesses to lead. At Edelman, we've come up with something called action communications. It's not just about talking about things, it's about doing things. And we really believe in that, and I think the data shows, why that's so important.
Oscar, I'll pivot it over to you.
I think in addition to those points, meet stakeholders where they are. Treat them, understand them in a way that reflects your ongoing invested understanding of where they're coming from. And that is really important.
All right. And Ariel, to close us off, any key takeaways?
Sure. I think at many institutions, communicators are siloed and not given a seat at the table. So I happen to be lucky to be at an institution that supports what I do and to be able to sit on the operating committee. But for those who do not, remember that your natural response can be, I don't have a messaging solution for this. What are we going to do? Then I'm happy to message it. Try to push that because I think more and more I'm seeing communicators just put into these little boxes where they are meant to put lipstick on pigs or whatever the idiom is. I'm forgetting what it is now. And it's really up to you to say, actually, a corrective action or some sort of new initiative is really within my remit as a communicator. That is something, that's a story to tell, not just repurposing what you've already decided. So, push that door down, break it down.
I love that.
Hey, push the door down and break it down. Great advice to wrap it up. I would absolutely love all of yours. So I wanted to thank Eleanor. Thank you for being such a fantastic moderator. Really appreciate it. And thank you to Margot for presenting the data, and to our wonderful panelists, Ariel, Oscar, and Treaty. We really appreciate you being here today and taking the time for us. And thanks to Edelman for partnering on this webinar. And thanks to the IPR team for running fantastic webinars as usual. Yes. So appreciate each and every one of you for joining us today and for asking such really great questions. We hope you enjoyed it and found it valuable. Clearly, we have a lot of work to do. The playback will be available on our website and YouTube channel within 48 hours. So hope you all have a nice day, morning, evening, wherever you are based. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
All right. And there it is. So, let's go ahead and
that will be available on our website. And
oof, wow, that was fun.
Nicely done, Samantha.
One more time.
Nicely done. That was a great thing to share. Did a great video to share.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, I really, really agree with some of the things that you were saying, especially with this absolute obsession with, like, it's institutional trust. We need to hit them harder with institutional trust. It's just old, kind of outdated, you know?
Hypocritical, if you ask me. You know, you got to be building on trust, and I think the trust is lost.
Yeah. Whoa, hello. Let's stop sharing that. Yeah.
Well, not in all cases. I think that generally there's a lot of people out there that are lost their job, and they're in the tech industry, and I'm not part of that. I'm a construction worker, but I love tech, and you know, I just see such situations.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that with the trust being lost, it's not really something where we can just use those same institutions. We have a lot of things that we have to build up all over again, you know?
I agree with that.
Yeah. What other takeaways, what other big things did you get from it?
I think people are trying. People are trying to make it. It was positive. I mean, I don't know. I came into it very late in my, so I'm a little bit not entirely sure what happened, what this was all about entirely. It just, but yeah, my apologies, Samantha. Just the topics were just they keep my head going. I have ADHD, so my head's going a million miles an hour all the time. So
yeah, you should definitely drop by the ND chat then. So in my Discord, for anyone else who's watching, we actually recently started up an entirely new channel all about neurodiversity support. So kind of a plug. Sorry about that, but also it's cool. You should go.
That's great.
Yeah. I don't know. For this year's Edelman's report, I kind of feel like it's more of last year's, which is not a good thing. Like, last year was the first time that business became more trustworthy than nonprofits, education, journalism, or government, all in one go. And now we looked at the stats. I think you joined after they shared the slides. But now it's gone up from a +1 on business compared to other industries to a +3. And that's like 2 additional points for an international survey of upwards of 50,000 like survey respondents. That's not small potatoes. Like, that is very statistically significant, you know? Absolutely huge. So I think that what I'm going to end up doing now is basically pull the report, and I'm going to do a redo of the... Oh.
My apologies, sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I think that what I'm going to do now is last year we did an Edelman's Trust Barometer report on the YouTube channel. So I think what I'm going to do again is I'm just going to go ahead and redo that Edelman's report. So I've posted that in the Discord, and I've also posted it on my YouTube channel. So if you are watching this and you have an opinion about Edelman's, pop into the Discord general chat and offer your feedback. Say, hey, here's my takeaway from it. And what I'll do is I'll collect the takeaways from all of us together, and then I'll put in that video, here's where I think this Edelman's Trust Barometer is truly going to impact technology, open source, The adaptation of AI, I think, was a big category, and then also how it's going to impact the community industry as a whole. So that's probably what I'm going to focus on for that video. But yeah.
Fantastic, Samantha. You know what? We need more people representing, that's not, you're not a stakeholder in that regard. So it sounds like you're coming from it from the right place and it's in your heart. So that's, I think, what transparency is about.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Ironically, that's one of the big patterns coming out of this year's report too. We just need more transparency, and we need that to not be coming from an institutional brand.
Yeah, and with I'm not trying to pitch any names, but AI from IBM Think 2019, they had stated that AI would be open, transparent, and available. That was the three main key points of AI. Yeah. And I think that that ChatGPT is that way. But there's been a lot of talk about it actually getting angry because the same question being asked or being elaborated on, and it becomes irritated is what they explained it to be. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like ChatGPT is really going to be impacting a large majority of our industry. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, and it's great. It is great. It's just that it needs to, like, what is controlling it, and how is it adjusting for bias? Like, I'm a huge fan of IBM. I just seen a lot of the work that they've been doing and keep up to date with their technology. And I can't afford to use it, and I don't work in an industry of that sort. But I think they've got their thumb on a lot of that AI technology thought, the thinking of it.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see what happens when AI becomes quote unquote affordable, because ChatGPT is currently in beta. So all of the people using ChatGPT are basically the product, but it is coming out with premium tiers, and we are going to start to see larger businesses take advantage of AI. What's that's gonna do? This also kind of reminds me of a podcast episode with Jenna Snavely at Digital Marketer. She interviewed the SEO specialist for IBM's knowledge base, and they have on the order of something like 380,000 pages on their website. And he's just like, yeah, there's absolutely no way we could possibly do SEO for IBM with that many pages.
I think that's where we need to be open and start bringing it all together again. And it starts from the ground up, but it comes from the people. I think that ultimately we all have to stay open and work together at it. I mean, maybe not so much myself. I'm more of an observer, but I sure love knowing about it. And hopefully one day I can contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining me here, both in the Discord on YouTube and also all of you on LinkedIn, for the proper recording and video of this new 2023 Edelman's Trust Report. Please go to youtube.com/@SociallyConstructed.Online and subscribe. That video I'm hoping will be up in due time. I've been running really, really behind on my YouTube videos, but trust me, I've got a ton of incredible content waiting for all of you to upload, including, we actually saw him here today, Adrian's book I still need to do a review on. I have not forgotten about you, Adrian. So yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you kindly.
You too. Have a good day, everyone, and I'll see you in the Discord. Bye.
Thank you.